Welcome back to another of Hannah's modern-day parables. This one is called The Agent's Last Call. Inspired by the parable of the workers in the vineyard, Matthew 20 verses 1 to 16. Rain had delayed the project for weeks. What should have been one of the biggest successes in Harrison Construction's history was now hanging by a thread. The vision of a brand new community center stood almost complete. But unless every last detail was finished before midnight, his company would face hundreds of thousands of pounds in contractual penalties. Jack Harrison looked across the site. Electricians were wiring the final rooms. Bricklayers hurried to finish the final section of wall. Decorators rushed between corridors carrying paint trays and rollers. Everyone was working as hard as they could. But it wasn't enough. Jack looked at the time on his watch. It was 8 a.m. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He knew exactly who to call. "Morning, Dave." "Jack, mate. Everything all right? I need help." "How many?" "4 builders." Dave owned Final Call Recruitment Agency, supplying skilled tradesmen across the county. Without hesitation, he replied, "I'll make a few calls. They'll be with you by 9. True to his word, 4 experienced builders arrived on site just before 9 a.m. After a quick safety briefing, they collected their equipment and immediately got to work. The morning passed quickly. Despite everyone's efforts, Jack could see the schedule beginning to slip once again. At 11 a.m., he picked up his phone. "Dave, I need another 4. "No problem. I'll have them with you by noon." Just before 12 o'clock noon, another van pulled onto the site. 4 more builders climbed out smiling. "Morning. Where do you need us?" Jack pointed towards the rear of the building. "Straight through there. Thank you for coming." Jack was feeling hopeful now. The work continued. The sound of drills echoed through the building. Forklifts moved pallets of materials. Dust filled the air as every tradesman worked side by side with one goal in mind: finish the project. By early afternoon, the building looked transformed. Walls were painted. Doors were fitted. Floors were almost complete. Yet Jack knew there was still too much to do. At 2 p.m., another call was made. "Dave, I still need another 4. Dave laughed. "I thought you might. I'll have them there by 3. Back at Final Call Recruitment Agency, several builders who hadn't received work that morning sat chatting over coffee. Every time the office phone rang, they looked up hopefully. Some had been waiting all week. Others wondered whether any work would come at all. So when Dave walked into the waiting area, "I need 4 builders," every hand shot into the air. Within minutes, another team was making its way to the site. Arriving just before 3 p.m., Jack greeted each one with a grateful smile. "I'm glad you came." "We are too," one builder replied. "We're just thankful for the work, sir." The afternoon raced by, and as 4 p.m. approached, Jack stood quietly looking over the site. So much had been achieved, but there was still so much to be done if he was to get the job finished on time. Jack knew he needed one final push, so he needed to speak to Dave. Without hesitation, he reached for his phone one last time. "Dave, mate, I know it's late, but I need another 4. David glanced at the clock. It was late in the working day, and the remaining builders who were sat in the back office were packing up and ready to go home, feeling deflated that no work had come for them. So when Dave entered the room, they were surprised. One by one, Dave called the remaining builders to come forward. "I've got a job for you. It'll only be for an hour." Before he'd even finished speaking, one builder replied, "I'll take it." "So, will I. Count me in." "Where do we need to go?" said the 4th builder. None of them complained about how little time remained. They were simply grateful to have been remembered at all. Within minutes, they arrived on site just before 5 p.m., signed in, collected their equipment, and joined everyone else to complete the build. The day raced towards its end. As the final hour passed, every person on site worked together. The last door was hung, the final skirting board fitted, the windows secured. Finally, the protective sheeting rolled away. Jack stood back, smiled, and quietly said, "We've done it." Cheers erupted across the site. Builders who had never met before shook hands. Some laughed. Others simply sat on stacks of timber, exhausted but proud. Together they had completed what had once seemed impossible. The community center was finished. The penalties had been avoided. Everyone had played their part. As the sun began to set, Jack gathered everyone together. "Thank you. I couldn't have done this without every one of you." Dave had arrived on the site as per Jack's request, so he could pay the workers. Jack asked David to hand out the payment envelopes. David smiled. "We'll begin with those who answered the final call." The 4 builders who had arrived in the final hour stepped forward. Each received a full day's wage. Several of the builders who had arrived at 9 o'clock exchanged surprised glances. If they've received a full day's pay, surely we'll receive more. Next came the builders who had arrived at 3, then those who had joined at noon. Finally, the first 4 builders stepped forward. Each received exactly the agreed day's wage. As the final group opened their envelopes, smiles quickly disappeared. One builder stepped forward, unable to contain his frustration. "Hold on a minute." The chatter across the site stopped. He held up the envelope in his hand. "Is this some kind of joke?" Jack looked at him calmly. "What seems to be the problem?" "The problem, mate?" The builder laughed sarcastically. "We've been here since 9 o'clock this morning. We've worked through the rain. We've skipped our breaks. We've carried the heaviest materials." He pointed towards the 4 builders who had answered the final call. "But these guys, they only worked like the last hour, yet you've paid them exactly the same as us." Several of the other builders nodded. "That's not right, mate. It's not fair." Jack listened patiently before replying. "Let me ask you something. When you arrived this morning, didn't we agree a set wage for your work today?" The builder looked down at the envelope. "Yeah," Jack continued. "And aren't you holding exactly the amount we agreed?" "Yeah. So tell me, how have I been unfair to you?" The builder remained silent. Jack looked around at the others. "Have I reduced any of your wages in order to pay these 4 builders?" Heads slowly shook. "No." "Have I taken anything away from you?" Again, "No." "So why are you concerning yourselves and coveting what these 4 builders have received?" Silence settled across the building site. "I honored my agreement with you all, and I simply chose to be generous to those who answered the agent's final call." He looked towards the builders who had arrived in the last hour. They were just as willing to work. They were simply called upon in the last hour. Yes, later, but still called. And they came. Then he turned back to the others and quietly said, "Be careful that comparison doesn't rob you of the blessing you're already holding in your hands." No one spoke. Instead, every builder looked down at the envelope they were holding. Nothing had changed. Their wage hadn't been reduced. Their agreement hadn't been broken. The only thing that had changed was the way they viewed someone else's blessing. As they quietly made their way home that evening, each carried exactly what had been promised. Yet the greatest lesson they left with had nothing to do with money. It was that generosity should never be mistaken for unfairness. The moral of this story is, Jesus said in Matthew chapter 20 verse 26, "So the last will be first, and the first will be last." But what does that mean? In Jesus' parable, every worker received the same wage, not because they all worked the same number of hours, but because the landowner chose to be generous. Likewise, every builder in the agent's final call received the same agreed wage, whether they answered the first call of the day or the final one. The first builders weren't treated unfairly. They received exactly what they had agreed to. Their joy only disappeared when they compared their blessing with someone else's. So this parable reminds us that God's grace is never earned by how long we've served Him, or how hard we've worked, or even how early we answered His call. Whether we came to Christ as children or in what seems like the final hour of life, His offer of salvation is and remains the same. God's generosity towards someone else never takes away from what He has promised you. The danger of comparing is, comparison breeds resentment whilst gratitude produces contentment, and lets us remember that grace is God's gift to all who lets Him in when He knocks. So Hannah's reflection is this: have you ever found yourself rejoicing over your own blessing until someone else received one too? It's easy to celebrate God's goodness when we think we're the only ones receiving it. But the moment we compare ourselves with others, joy can quickly turn into jealousy. The builders who started at 9 o'clock weren't robbed. Their wages weren't reduced. Their agreement wasn't broken. The only thing that changed was their perspective. How often do we question God's fairness because He chooses to bless someone we think doesn't deserve it? Perhaps someone who has lived a difficult life finds Christ at the very end and receives the same promise of eternal life like the person who's faithfully served Him for decades. Is that unfair? No, that's grace. Grace isn't earned, it is given. Today, don't measure God's goodness by what someone else receives. Instead, thank Him for the promises He has already placed in your hands. And remember, it's never too late to answer God's final call.